Hi folks, here is the lesson for Tuesday, December 1st, and we have a snow day today, which you guys obviously already know. So I'm just making a video of the lesson that I would have taught in class for cohort A, and you guys can watch this video, you can watch the other video that's linked in the outline, and then complete the homework for lesson 5, and then lesson 6 is just a review section. So this is the new lesson. And this is dealing with vertex form of a quadratic. And we'll talk about that in this note. So this is kind of a review from the previous two lessons. This is lesson 3 and lesson 4. So we're going to have a general form of a quadratic, and we talked about these kind of individually. Previously, we talked about this H and K. The H was the left-right or horizontal shift. And remember that this one seems to do the opposite of what you might think. So the opposite of the sign. So if it's positive, it moves actually to the left. And if it's negative, it moves to the right. And then the K value, that plus a number at the end, remember the H is in a bracket with the X and the K is separate off to the side. The K is going to be what moves it up and down. So H and K didn't change the shape of the parabola at all. The H just moves it left and right, and the K moves it up and down in the same way according to the sign. So the same as the sign. So with the H, it goes in the opposite direction of what you might think, and the K moves it in what you probably think is a normal way. So if it's plus 3, it goes up 3. If it's minus 2, it goes down 2. The other piece, the A value, so that A value in front, that affects the shape of the parabola. So it's not just where the parabola is, but it can also make the parabola a different shape. So remember that if we had bigger numbers, so larger than 1, it's stretched taller and narrower. So you're going to have like a tall, narrow parabola. If it's less than 1, like a 0.5, it's going to be wider out like that. If A is positive, it's opening up. And if A is negative, it's opening down. So that was all from yesterday. We're going to now combine these together and look at all 3 of these different letters. So in lesson 3, we dealt with H and K, and then in lesson 4, we dealt with A. Now we're going to kind of put this all together. So the first thing we're going to do is fill in a table and figure out what the H, K, and A values are from the equation. So the value of A, remember, is always the number out front. So the A value in this equation is going to be 2. And the value of H, remember, is the opposite sign of what's in there. So it says minus 1. It's going to go in the opposite direction, so I'll put plus 1. And then the K is the last number that's off by itself, and it doesn't change sign. So that's 3. And then what would the vertex be? Remember, the vertex is the start at 0, 0 for the base parabola. But now my new vertex will move 1 to the right and up 3. So this is moving 1 to the right and up 3. So the new point would be the point 1, 3. The axis of symmetry is going to be the same as the H value. So my axis of symmetry is x equals 1. And the direction of opening comes from the A. Is A positive or negative? And I see that my A value here is a positive 2, so it's opening up. And my step pattern, for this step pattern, you're going to multiply the steps by A. So here our base step pattern is 1, 3, 5, 7. We're going to multiply that by 2. So we'll get 2, 6, 10, 14. And then we'll go on to the next one. So remember, the A is the number out front. Now, if there's no number there, I just see a negative sign, but we know that the number out front multiplying something, if there's no number listed, is a 1. So this number here for A is -1. The H value is the number in the bracket, but opposite sign. So it says +2 in the bracket, so that's actually going a -2, which is going to move it to the left. And then my K is a +1, which is going up 1. So my vertex has moved 2 to the left and 1 up. So it will be -2 because it's going 2 to the left and 1 up. Notice that the vertex is always just your H and your K. The axis of symmetry is always just your H value, so that's x equals -2. And the direction of opening comes from whether A value is positive or negative. And here it's a negative, so that's going to be opening down. So we get our step pattern by multiplying the original 1, 3, 5, 7 by my A value. So I'm going to multiply these by -1. So this is going to be -1, -3, -5, -7. So that's the same shape, but just flipped downwards. 2 more to go. Again, we're looking at our A value as the number out front. That's a 3. The H value is the number in the bracket with X, but the opposite sign. So that's a 2. And because it's we're going to move that to the right. The K, because we've already flipped that sign, the K is -3, so we're going to move that down. So we know that this parabola is moving the opposite way of this 2, so I've made it a positive, so it's going 2 to the right, and it's going -3, so 3 down. My vertex will be 2, -3. So just remember, we're changing the direction left-right by changing that sign on the H value. The axis of symmetry is always just the H value, and the direction of opening comes from the sign of A. So if A is positive, it's opening up. Then we multiply the step pattern, the original step pattern of 1, 3, 5, 7, by A. So 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 5 times 3 is 15, and 7 times 3 is 21. So this step pattern would get pretty big pretty quick. You would go very high up on your graph with that A value of 3. Last example. Here, my A value is -1.5. So that's going to be an opening down, right? Here, my H says +3, but I know that's going to move to the left because it does the opposite thing. So I'm putting -3 to the left. And my K is -1. So it's going down. That brings my vertex as -3, -1. My axis of symmetry is x equals -3. It's always just the H value from your table. And the direction of opening is going to be down because you've got a negative A value. We're now going to take the A value and multiply the original 1357 by negative 1.5. So negative 1.5 times 1 is negative 1.5. Negative 1.5 times 3 is negative 4.5. Negative 1.5 times 5 is negative 7.5. And so on. Can't fit the last one, but that's okay. So we're going to use this to graph some parabolas without having to do a table of values. So this was one of the ones from that previous chart. We had A was 2, my H was 1, which means it's moving to the right. My K was 3, which means it's moving up. We know my step pattern originally is 1, 3, 5. I won't be able to fit the 7, so I'll just leave it off. And I'm going to do times 2 because of the A value. So I need to multiply my steps times 2. So it will be 2, 6, and 10. So we're going to go through and do a graph of this parabola. I know that this parabola is opening up. And it's been shifted up as well. So I'm going to make my, kind of highlight my axis here. And I'm not going to leave a lot of room down below, just so I have more room to go up with my parabola. Depending on how big of graph paper that you guys have, that's your X and Y. So my first step is to graph the new vertex. So to graph the vertex, which is going to be 1, 3. So I'm going to take a point and go over 1 to the right and up 3. Then I'm going to use the step pattern. So I'm going to graph this using the step pattern of this 2, 6, 10. So the adjusted step pattern. So here I'm going over 1, up 2. So that 2 is the first step in my step pattern. Then I put another dot. And then the next step is over 1, up 6. So 2, 4, 6. And that's the next step. And then I'll put another dot. Now the next one would be over 1 and up 10, but that's going to be way off my graph. So I'm just going to kind of mirror this on the other side. It should be exactly symmetry, exactly through that line of symmetry. It will be the same on both sides of the vertex. So then we just connect it. Make sure you put arrows at the ends of your graph to show that it's continuing on forever. I'm going to write the equation, which is especially important if you have two parabolas graphed on the same axis. I need to know which one is which. I'll do one more example of the graphing here. This one also was in the chart, and we had A was negative 1.5, H was negative 3, K was negative 1. So the vertex was negative 3, negative 1. And my step pattern, instead of being 1, 3, 5, it was negative 1.5. We're multiplying by our A value now, negative 4.5 and negative 7.5. So this one is opening down. So I'm going to plan for that when I set up my axis. So I'm going to set up the y-axis kind of in the middle. I kind of wish I had a thicker marker but on my tablet. No, maybe this will be better. So there's my y-axis. But I'm going to start my x-axis really high up because I'm opening down parabola. I want to leave more room at the bottom. Going down below there. So I'm going to start with my vertex of -3, -1. So from the origin, I count 1, 2, 3 squares over and 1 square down. So that's where this shift going left, right, up, down from your H and K. That's what you use that for. Then I'm going to use the step pattern. So the first step is over 1, down 1.5. That's a little bit hard to graph, but just do your best at putting it halfway between those two squares. You won't have any other messier decimals than like a 1.5, than a 0.5, I mean. Then the next one is over 1, down 4.5. So this is 0.5 to get to that line. Then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 more squares, and it's going to end up at a whole number. I'm going to put that. And the last one, I might be able to fit another one here. So that's 1.5, and this was 4.5. Now over 1 and down 7.5. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0.5. I'll kind of put it, it's a little bit off my graph, but not far. So I'll put that one there. Just half a square past my graph, so I can kind of add it in. And then I'm going to mirror these on the other side. And then I'm connecting the dots with arrows at the end. That's good communication marks. And then write your equation beside your graph. Again, especially if you have two graphs on the same piece of graph paper on the same axis. You need to show me which one is which. The second last example here, we're kind of going in the opposite direction. We want to find the equation of this parabola. So I know that the equation of a parabola is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And I know that the vertex tells me about h and k. That's why this is called vertex form. So to get to this vertex, I'm going over 3 to the right and up 4. So the vertex here, do this in another color, is 3, 4. So it's going 3 to the right and 4 up. So the 3 to the right tells me something about the h value, and the 4 up tells me something about the k value. So that's going to help me. This is going to be x, and remember opposite sign. It went to the positive side, so I have to put a -3. And then the +4 at the end says up 4. So you're just kind of working backwards here. The last thing, we have to figure out the step pattern. Now, you should be able to see, you should be able to see from here that my a value is for sure going to be negative because it's opening down. But I also want to figure out how big those steps are. So the first step normally would be over 1, down 1, but it's not going down 1, it's going down 2 there. So here, my first step is over 1, down 2. My next step, if I look here, I'm going over 1, down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like about 6. So if your steps, normally it's 1, 3, 5, and now we've got 2, 6, and then off our graph. What's our a value? What have we multiplied by here? Looks like we're doubling it, right? So that means a is 2, but not just 2, it's -2 because it's going down. So then that is how we get the last piece of information to make this equation. So here we get y equals -2 times x minus 3 squared plus 4. So that's how I can find the equation of a parabola from the graph. The last question deals with a word problem. So we can interpret this with this equation. On a rainy day, the profit of an umbrella seller can be modeled with this equation. Now we've got P equals negative 30 x minus 10 squared plus 300. So we know, always list out your A and your H and your K that you know. So A is negative 30, so this means that it opens down. H is going to be positive 10. Remember, opposite sign of that one in the brackets with the X. And K is 300. So that means the vertex is 10, 300. So we know that this parabola will have a vertex somewhere around here. Like, we don't have to worry too much about the scale, that this is 10, 300, and that it will be opening down. So this vertex is the maximum because it's an opening down parabola. So this tells us what should the price be to maximize profit. So we see that X is the price, and kind of my Y or my P is profit. So the X is 10 and the profit is 300, and that just comes from finding the vertex. So A, price should be, you're just looking for the X value of the vertex, the $10. And for B, that's going to be the maximum profit. Where does that happen? How high does it go up? That's the 300. So the max profit is 300. Now, I wouldn't do a super accurate graph for something like this. I just want to kind of show, here's the vertex and I know it's opening down. I'm not going to do this step pattern because this is huge, right? To try and get like 300 on a graph paper. But we know that this is the vertex and it's opening down. So we know that that's the highest point. That's all the information we really need there. Okay, you guys are off to work on today's homework. You're going to complete lesson 5 and lesson 6 from the unit outline. Make sure you email me if you have any questions. Have a great day, folks.